Welcome to WatchJojo Cooking. Today we're going to be deep frying wings. So I've got all these fresh wings, and of course don't want them to go to waste because they're really expensive for some reason. So we're going to bread and fry them. Today we're going to be doing a flour batter panko mix. For that we're going to need several bowls for our different phases. Our chicken itself, flour, a bunch of seasoning, eggs, and then panko. If you don't have panko, you can use breadcrumbs, you can use cornflakes, you can use, like if the cornflakes are broken up enough, that's like the new fab thing. And even if you're in a real pinch, you can literally just go flour, batter, flour, but I would make sure that your end flour mix has like a decent amount of seasoning, and I'd probably go and throw some bigger things in there to give it a little bit more texture. But today we're working with panko. So we're deep frying the chicken. So you may be thinking to yourself, deep fryers are probably pretty expensive, but they're not really. You can get pretty cheap ones that'll basically just heat the oil for you, and those will run you like 20 or 30 bucks, but like they're an absolute pain to clean. What I've chosen to buy is a fryer that has its own filtering method. So I have a switch and all the oil drains through into the container in the bottom. So then I can move all my oil out, take everything apart, so that everything is nice and easy to clean. And if you're in an absolute pinch, you still want to go frying and you don't have a deep fryer, you could pan fry, but you're going to need a decent amount of oil, and you're going to need to be rotating it pretty often because you're not going to be able to fully submerge it like you would with a deep fryer. Cool. So now we're on to the seasoning mix. So we're going to go for a full teaspoon, of paprika. So a full teaspoon of paprika, a full teaspoon of chili powder, a full teaspoon of black pepper, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, half teaspoon of allspice, this one will add a nice earthy flavor, whereas everything else is like kind of a spiciness. You want to go pretty light on that. You definitely don't want to put too much of the allspice. And then a half to a full teaspoon of oregano. I'd lean pretty hard on this. Oregano goes really nice with fried chicken. Then we're going for our bulk. We need flour, 1.5 cups. So I'm using a half cup measurement here, 3 times. And we're going to round that out with a tablespoon of salt. I would use some finer grain. And a tablespoon of brown sugar. With brown sugar, you want to make sure that it's not too dry and it's not become crusty or broken up. It's still flaky. The best way to do this is make sure your bag is properly sealed after you're done. And bonus points if you want to put a piece of bread in there and replace bread on a regular basis. That will absorb all the moisture, making it so you still have that nice grainy consistency. Okay, so now we're gonna whisk that up. Now we're gonna mix all of our spices together. We'll start to see the colors from the bottom rise up. The red hues from our paprika and our chili powder to give it a nice flavor. And the garlic and salt, we'll round that out with black pepper. The black pepper gives it kind of an extra little kick, of course. Always double check your edges. The edges is where all your spices are gonna hide, and then you're gonna be wasting your spices. Or you're gonna have one bite that is just aggressively flavorful. We're gonna do our chicken fried two different ways. We're gonna go with the flour batter flour method, and we're going with the flour batter panko method. So that we have panko here, and this has got some good flavors in it already, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna add it to our flour, and what the flour here is going to do is it's going to fill in all the cracks in between our panko mix here, and that will make so we have one solid crust and we don't have oil soaked chicken. A little bit more. Panko adds very nice texture to the dish. Now we're gonna start a process. So I have several bowls in front of me, but you only need a 3-bowl system. I just have our two different mixes. I have both our just flour mix and our panko mix. So when I batter, I like to go with the 2-hand system. I have my wet hand and my dry hand. My wet hand does my chicken and my egg mix. My dry hand does flour and my crust, whether it's panko or another layer of flour in this case. This allows it so that I'm not touching my eggs and then touching flour afterwards and essentially battering my own fingers, because at the end of the day, I touch raw chicken. I'm not gonna eat my fingers. It's not healthy. We're gonna just do up our eggs, give it a quick crack. Best way to prevent getting eggshells is honestly, you need to give it a nice firm whack. I always hit and pull back pretty quick. We're gonna go with 4 eggs for everything. Might be a bit overkill, but best way to whisk. Hit from an angle. All the action is in your wrist. Your arm should be doing almost nothing. It's all in the wrist. Now we're finally going to start our system here. Wet hand. Drop. Dry hand. Dredge. And drop. Wet hand. Batter. Good coverage. Drop. Dry hand. Rest of crust. And drop. Repeating. Wet hand, grabbed, dropped. Dry hand. Dredging. And drop. Wet hand. Mix. Dry hand. Mix. I've got like a little bit of flour on my hands, but I don't have a ton of flour on my hands. If I were to have touched all this egg mix and then touched flour, all that flour would not be sticking to my chicken, it'd be sticking to my hands, and it's not doing me any good there. Same principles apply for the panko. Your wet hand is wet, your dry hand is dry. We're just changing the final mixture there. And you always want to make sure you're fully submerged, you see good coverage. You're not like crazy dripping because you're just like losing egg. And this will be a little bit harder to get on because it'll only fill in the cracks so much. But as you can see, there are spots where it's flour, where if we hadn't done that, that chicken would be exposed, which is why we always add flour to our panko mix. So what matters here is every phase you're getting complete coverage. My wing comes out of the flour completely covered. It comes out with this egg completely covered. And then that is used as our bonding agent for this panko. Which then comes out completely covered. Now don't get me wrong, my hands are still pretty covered, but at the end of the day, the amount of batter I could have on my hands from this would have made, it would be sticking to the wings, it would end up, it would rip off some of the batter. Like my hands would be sticky enough that I'd be pulling batter away from what I'm making. But at the end, the final handling I'm doing is with dry hands, so everything that goes on the chicken stays on the chicken. First, we're going to talk a little bit about oil. So there's a lot of choices you can make whenever you're getting oil for your deep fryer, or if you're pan frying or whatever you choose to do. Oils I would stay away from, even if I was pan frying, would be I'd stay away from vegetable oil. Its burning temperature is too low. And it kind of leaves a taste behind. And then same goes for olive oil. Olive oil has a very strong flavor. When it's in small amounts, like a pan coating, it adds a nice dimension. But when you're literally like submerging things, A, really expensive oil. B, honestly, it's too much of that flavor. So you're literally making your dish worse for more money. So what I usually go for is either sunflower oil, which has a low burning temperature. It's a little healthier, and it's, so like I use that for my kind of like low temperature cooking, like in the 325 zone. And then you can use peanut oil, which obviously has the caveat that you cannot serve it to anyone who is allergic to peanuts. But it has a very nice flavor, very nice for deep frying, especially breaded things, and just beautiful flavor, but a little more expensive. And then of course there's the tried and true highest burning temperature, so like you have to get to that temperature to burn it, and that's canola oil. Canola oil is easily the cheapest, most effective way to fill your fryer, and it's what I'm going to use today. Because it's cheap, it's reliable, it does exactly what you want, it doesn't leave behind any flavor really, so the only thing at play is the flavors you've already put on your food. And what is burning temperature? Burning temperature is the temperature it has to hit before it burns, and it starts becoming black, and it starts changing how the oil tastes, and then eventually how your food tastes. So the higher a burning temperature, the higher you can turn up your fryer before your oil is at risk of burning over time. So now my fryer is set up. We're gonna give it a quick fill up with all the oil we have. Every fryer should have a fill line. Does mine have a fill line still, or is it all gone? There it is. Yeah, I have it on the side here. It's just enough to submerge what's going in a basket. So I can't leave that flipped because that's where my drain is. Coincidentally, for this model's like fill line is like exactly 3 liters, which is what I bought, which is sweet. that's just convenient. As you can see, less oil than you think. It'll still submerge, it'll bubble up, and also worth noting with oil, when you're cooking with it, it will rise a little bit when it cooks, like from the bubbling process there. So you need to leave yourself a lot of room in your pan if you are pan frying. The temperature we're setting it today is about 180 to 180 Celsius or 360 Fahrenheit. So that's like my chicken cooking temperature. Any breading stuff, that's what I'm gonna cook it at. When I'm working with things where I want to keep that light color, or I want it to like slow roll for a bit, I'll drop it down to like a 325, 315, aka like 160, 150 range in the Celsius. Now for the part I hate the most, waiting. So my quick check here to see if my fryer oil is on, like let's say yours doesn't have a ready light or anything, is I'm gonna take some of the flour that we're gonna be using anyways and just drop a little bit. And you can see that sizzling, that popping. It's a little faint. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give it an extra 5 minutes, then it should be good. And the reason I'm willing to put flour basically straight into my fryer, because like it will congeal, it will stay at the bottom, and it will build up, is because this guy's so easy to clean that I'm gonna be cooking with flour today. There's gonna be flour in there, and the extra couple of grams isn't gonna hurt anybody. Another option to check the heat would be if you had a thermometer, perfect. If you were feeling a little risky, you could like, one, you wash your hands, you have a little bit more, just, it don't pop, but that is like, especially with like something that doesn't have a lid or something you can put on it, is a little bit sketchy, because if you throw too much water at a fryer, it does some scary stuff. So deep fryer is now ready to go. First thing I'm gonna do, and I apologize for the noise, is I like to use a hood vent always with my fryers. So I have it on a pretty low setting just to like kind of get the steam that's gonna come off of it. When I first started living with roommates, I had a much worse fryer. I always had it just kind of hooked up in the corner because like we all loved using it, because we were all young and dumb and wanted to deep fry everything, including things that probably shouldn't be deep fried. And I had it hooked up underneath a countertop like this, and it actually started blistering and breaking up the wood and causing damage to the kitchen, because the heat and the moisture that's going to come off of this guy is enough to do that kind of damage. So just word of warning, put it where your stove is, make sure all your burners are off, obviously, and nothing, you're not putting your fryer on a hot surface. Like I haven't used my oven today. And I'm using a hood vent to try and get rid of all that moisture and that greasiness that's gonna become airborne and make your kitchen a little dirty. Now we're on to the fun part, the actual frying. So I've got a clip here so I can hold everything up until it needs to go down. It's worth noting with our flour dredged chicken that the moisture has made it so that I need to re-dredge this just before I put it in. So let's say you're cooking in a pan right now and you want to make sure that you're not gonna get burnt. You want to just very delicately lay it down, like start and let go. If you have some layer of protection you can be wearing, even just like a thin rubber glove will give you the quick couple of seconds you need to be able to rip that glove off rather than getting a nasty oil burn. I mean, it's not going to save you if you go and try and deep fry your fingers, but it will give you precious moments. In times when I haven't had plastic gloves, I've actually just used plastic bags, like portioning bags. I've used Ziploc bags occasionally and just kind of use them like little oven mitts. If I ever had to like protect my hands from something, to grab something. When you work in a kitchen, you find creative ways to solve problems. Cool. So they've all been laid down nice and carefully. We're gonna slowly drop them. Beautiful sizzle. Give this guy a little shake so he stays where he's supposed to. I've got a piece that's a little thick. I'm just trying to make sure she stays submerged and crispy. Maybe you're wondering, like, how do I know when my chicken's ready? Well, there are a couple ways to go about this. I'd say your chicken shouldn't take much longer than like 6 minutes for wings. Like, they're very tiny. It doesn't take long for the heat to get in there and do its job. If you have a thermometer, your objective temperature is it needs to hit 165. At this point, you've killed off any of the bacteria that would cause like salmonella and like you to get violently ill. Additionally, the last check and what I'm going to use is I'm going to just slice into my fattest wing at 6 minutes and just see where it's at. And that's just an easy enough way to just slice into it, look at it, and we'll slice into it, look at it, and if it's not raw, then you're good.
Maybe talk about it.
Absolutely. So, at first, when you take out your wings or anything you're deep frying, you want to let it sit there, and if you have time or if you're in a rush, you need to shake it off because there's still going to be oil resting all over these guys. And if you go to like grab it with your hands, you'll end up hurting yourself. So now I'm going to do my test. It was 6 minutes. Now I'm going to slice in there. I'm going to peel back. You can see the juices running. Those are running, but they're running clear. They're not running pink. The meat itself is juicy, but white. Perfect. And you might be able to see a little bit of red in there, right? And someone might be like, oh my God, it's raw. It's not raw. What this is this is a vein of the chicken. And it's got no blood, it's got nothing can be bad for you. And this is what happens when you're dealing with dark meat. So now we have our final product, breaded wings, done 2 different ways. You can see the thicker texture on our panko wings here, and these are done.